to start by thanking everybody for putting this event together. It is just really incredible. I've had the opportunity to take part in other Know Your Rights sessions in the past, and I have to say, having 31 participants, this is probably the most that I've ever seen. So I'm really excited to be in front of so many people to talk about what it means to police in a sanctuary city. And really to have the police department in the city, co-sponsoring this event, I think really speaks volumes for the city. We have been a sanctuary city, I want to say, since about 1987. I grew up in the city of Cambridge, and we really recognize in this city the importance of, go back to the first slide, I'm not quite, thank you. Second slide. There we go. We recognize in the city the importance of providing a safe and welcoming environment where people who come here to seek better opportunities, that they can do so safely. We realize that many in our immigrant community, documented or not documented, live in fear. And we in the city do not want you to be fearful when it comes to accessing services in our city. So that means living in a sanctuary city, every Cambridge resident is strongly encouraged to seek and obtain assistance from the many resources available to the Cambridge community. If you reach out to the police department, you do not have to be fearful that we're going to ask you to, show us documentation that you're here legally. We do not care about that. What we care about is we care about your safety. We care about your well-being, both for you and your family. So we really want you to feel safe in accessing the services that the city has to offer. Again, regardless of your documentation status. Next slide, please. So what can you expect from an interaction with a Cambridge police officer? The Cambridge police, we do not arrest residents for violation of immigrant right laws. We also do not cooperate with ICE when they come in the city. We do not assist them in investigations. We do not do any immigration enforcement whatsoever. We do not inquire about the specific immigration status. We'll never ask you to present a green card or any of your papers. Again, we care about your safety and we care about your well-being. And you should feel welcome in the city of Cambridge to seek help from the police department. I'm now going to turn it over to one of my colleagues, Steve Megahays. And he's going to talk about some of our services that we offer. Can we highlight Steve?
Good afternoon. My name is Stephen Megahays. I'm a Deputy Superintendent with the Cambridge Police Department, and I oversee the Family and Social Justice section. I'm going to briefly speak about some programs and initiatives that we have in the Family and Social Justice section that we are part of. And the first ones are, if you can just go to the slide, alternatives to the next slide, please. As you can see, we'll talk about our Safety Net Collaborative, and we'll move on to Juvenile Diversion, our Focus Deterrence, our Second Chance program, and community court. Our Safety Net Collaborative is a wraparound approach of community-based services to better serve our Cambridge youth, especially those that are at risk. We have bi-weekly meetings with our community partners, and our community partners are our school department, our human services partners, our Department of Children and Family Services, juvenile probation, and Riverside Community Health are just some of the partners that we have as part of the collaboration. We meet bi-weekly, meaning every other week we have meetings, we get together and we discuss identified at-risk youth who can benefit from services. Not necessarily kids who are in trouble, but families who come forward and say, I just need help with my child. He's, acting out. I don't know what's going on. We bring those kids in. We try to provide them services or give them resources to help and guide that family with that youth. Our core elements, as you can see, is prevention, early intervention, and juvenile diversion. I'll just touch base real briefly on the prevention. Through the presence of our YROs in the schools, and the reason why we call them youth resource officers instead of the traditional term of school resource officers is because our youth resource officers go above and beyond just the traditional role of a school resource officer. They're assigned to teen centers in the evenings. They work evenings. They're assigned to teen centers. They also do home visits and follow-ups with families at their homes. So with the youth resource officers, building a strong relationship with our youth, and building trust and being that role model to prevent unsafe and delinquent behavior. That is the prevention. That's kind of the whole prevention. We follow that model. The next would be the early intervention, where YROs work with our schools and youth centers and families to identify youth with concerning social, emotional, and behavioral changes. Our YROs will intervene and connect the youth to family resources and community-based services. The next is our juvenile diversion program. Well, we typically deal with Cambridge youth between the ages of 12 and 17 years old. These youth, we have a multi-tiered approach to our diversion program, where it's community-based, meaning the police, we work with the youth here at our level. The next tier would be a clerk magistrate's hearing and juvenile court. And then finally, the district attorney's office has their own diversion program, and that'd be our third tier. But we work with those 12 to 17-year-olds who have committed a non-violent criminal offense. We do not, and I repeat, we do not want to arrest juveniles in our community. We see the benefit of working with our youth rather than bringing them to the criminal justice system or the juvenile justice system. Studies have shown that arresting a juvenile, they are, in going to court, they are 70% more likely of getting into the criminal justice system, which we do not want to do. A typical diversion with us is very unique. Our diversion typically lasts 3 months. And what we do is we bring the youth in who committed an offense, and we would work with that youth and their families. They would agree to our diversion agreement. And that agreement would be terms and conditions set by the family, whoever is involved in that situation. It's very unique, and it's always case by case. We also like to think outside the box when we're creating our diversion agreements with our families. And it could be from anywhere to, where a family member would say, I want my son to, do after school activities. We would work with our human services partners and connect them to teen centers. Or it could be mental health services or any type of other service. We would connect with our community partners. The next program I'd like to talk about is our focused deterrence unit. Our focused deterrence has evolved over the years, and it consists of 2 detectives and a licensed social worker that kind of make up the team. Our focused deterrence detectives work with young adults between the ages of 18 and 26. And as you can see, our juvenile diversion work with youth between 12 to 17. Our focused deterrence detectives are working with young adults who are at risk or highly at risk between ages of 18 and 26. Sometimes through our safety net collaborative, we have a couple individuals or youth that still are at risk, and they would transition to our focused deterrence detectives. And these detectives will get involved and work with them by providing services and resources as needed to that family. Our detectives and social worker will work with the young adult and their families to providing supports, resources, guidance, and keeping that young adult on track. They would conduct home visits. They would also work on violence mitigation strategies, whatever is needed to keep the young adult out of the criminal justice system. If we can work with that young adult, we would rather work with them, provide services, and avoid going to court.
Sorry to interrupt for a moment. My apologies. Halakiros, I think you're accidentally muted. Are you able to unmute before we continue? Thank you. Sorry to interrupt. Please continue.
Lucy, and I apologize if I talk too fast. Please tell me. Not a problem. Our next thing I'd like to talk about is our community court. It's something that started. It was formerly known as our homeless.
Sorry, everyone, we need to pause for just one moment to resolve the interpretation assignment, I think, for the MHARC. Give us just 1 minute because we're still all in the same channel together.
Okay.
And should he do that again? Did they miss something? I just feel like this is important with these youth.
Can everyone who's in the Amharic channel try it again? I updated it again. I'm not sure what the problem is exactly. So everyone who needs to hear the presentation should be in English if that's your chosen language. And then anyone in Amharic should pick Amharic.
Yes, Amharic.
I will let me end the interpretation, start that over, and then we can move on. I'm so sorry, everyone, thank you for your patience. Let me end it completely. Okay. So now we're, okay, so I hear the Amharic and I have ended it. So I'm going to start that over. I'm going to stop sharing the screen so we can do this. Let's see here. And everyone is assigned Spanish, Asian Creole. Start. There, you should be able to select your language now, and hopefully not hear anyone else speaking while you're speaking. I'm going to share the screen again, and you can continue with your presentation. Deputy Superintendent, are you ready?
Yep, I can hear you now. Sorry, I didn't hear anything.
No, it's okay.
And what I'll do too is I'll leave my information in the chat, and if people need to get a hold of me and talk a little bit more, I know this is brief and due to time, and I'm just giving a brief overview. I'm sorry, I'm still hearing the interpreters.
He's not in the,
I don't know what's happening.
I'm just hearing multiple interpreters. I'm sorry. I don't know if that's on my end or.
if you mute the original audio, try that. If you're hearing an interpreter in your channel, in the English channel, if you can mute the original audio, that might help.
Okay.
Let me know if you're still hearing interpretation.
Okay. You know what, Steve? You just have to select English. I was hearing it too. If you just select English on the language, it will set it off.
Yes, everyone who needs to hear only English should be in the English channel.
So am I good to go, Lucy?
I hope so.
All right. So I'm going to talk about our community court. It's something that formerly was known as our homeless court, and it's kind of evolved since then. It's where basically our criminal cases, where the homeless cases would go to our community court, where we would be able to leverage services and resources, and instead of criminal prosecution for these individuals, leading into what the Second Chance program is. And our Second Chance program was started in January of 2021 by one of our social workers, Alana Klein. She was collaborating with our partners at the Cambridge District Court, our District Attorney's Office, and Cambridge Housing Advocates and Navigators. And through the Second Chance program, social worker Klein was able to get eligible residents and various partners through the Cambridge Community Court to seal their criminal records, allowing them to apply and seek housing and other benefits. To this date, she was able to get 7 unhoused individuals successfully unsealing their records, and 5 out of the on other services. The other 2 are awaiting pending housing right now, but it just goes to show the initiative that we have taken here, working with our partners, especially down in court, to get our unhoused population to basically sit down with them and clear their cases through our community court, so that they're able to fill out an application, which our social workers have sat down with them and helped them fill out paperwork and able to get housing in our community. So that is overall a basic of what the Second Chance program is and what community court is. And that is all I have, but I will put my information in the chat, and I apologize for speaking fast. I'm working on that, but if there are any questions, I'll be glad to answer them at the end of the presentation. However, for future, if people want to reach out and know more, I have no problem reaching out. Thank you.
So we're now going to turn it over to Deputy Superintendent Pauline Carter-Wells to talk about scams.
Good evening, folks. As the commissioner said, my name is Pauline Wells, and I'm a deputy superintendent here, and I oversee the criminal investigation section. And I'm going to talk to you about some scam awareness and basically recognizing the common signs of a scam can really help to avoid falling for one. Can you change the slide, please? Protecting your personal information is absolutely a must. Please, please, please do not share your information with anybody. Your date of birth, your social security number, any kind of banking information, please do not share that with anyone, especially on the telephone. No one from any reputable company will call you on the phone to ask. Also, there are signs that you should watch out for as being part of a scam. Scammers will pretend to be from an organization that you know. It could be the Social Security Administration, it could be the IRS, it could be Medicare, a utility company, or a charity. So make sure that if somebody calls you on the phone looking for some sort of information, some personal information, do not fall for that. Also, scammers will also say on the telephone that there's a problem or a prize. They might say that you're in trouble with the government, or you owe money, or someone in your family has had an emergency, or they've been kidnapped. And in order for you to get them back, you have to pay some money. Definitely don't fall for those type of scams. Some of them will lie and say that you won money in a lottery or a sweepstakes. If you did not enter a lottery or a sweepstakes, chances are you did not win any money. So that's one of the biggest scams that they're using now. Scammers will also pressure you to act immediately. Like, they don't want you to get off the phone and check it out. They want to keep you on the phone. They don't want you to have time to think. And they might tell you not to hang up so you can't check out their story. Also, scammers will tell you to pay them in a specific way. Could you change the slide, please? And this is showing one particular way that they'll show. They want you to go buy money pack cards and call them and tell them what the number's on. So they have nobody can, there's no way to follow that up and be able to find out who they are. They want you to send money through a money transfer company, or by putting it on a gift card like this one. Some will send you a check that for a specific amount of money, tell you to deposit it, and then send them money. That check will always come back as bad. Can you change the slide, please? It's lost. There it is. Okay, some of the current scams that are being used is someone will call and say that you have a federal arrest warrant and that you have to pay fine. The IRS will call and tell you that you owe them money and that to send them money in a certain way to pay it off. Online dating scams. Even one of our detectives actually fell for one of these scams. So that just tells you how they can be very, they can really make it sound like it's true. Phishing scams. If you have personal papers or mail that you get from your bank, or anything that has personal information on it, you need to really don't throw them in the trash. People go through people's trash, they find their information, and then it's called a phishing scam. And they're able to open accounts under your name using your information. Another one is the grandparent scheme. They'll call a grandparent and tell them that one of their loved ones has been kidnapped, and in order to get them back, you need to pay them money, and you need to pay them in a certain way. And then, of course, the lottery scams. But here's on the slide, you'll see an example of something that you might get via email, and it'll look like it'll look like it's from a reputable company and could be even a company that you do business with. But if you look at the actual email address, it's a Comcast.net. Wells Fargo or any other company is not going to use that type of an email to send to people. So anything that you get via email, via telephone, or sometimes even mail, you have to be very, very careful. Do not give people your information at all. The IRS, for example, if they want to get in contact with you, they will send you a letter and ask you to contact them. They will never call. Next slide, please. Okay, this is just showing the fraud reports that we had in 2019 and 2020. Everything from counterfeits to identity theft, forged checks, con games, all kinds of stuff. And if you looked at the bottom, can you go back up one? If you look at the bottom, you'll see from 2019 to 2020, it's more than doubled. And we don't have the data for 2021 just yet. We'll have that soon, but I am telling you now, especially during COVID, people had a lot of time to scam. So, so very important just to keep your personal information close to you. And pretty much if it's too good to believe, then that means it's it's a scam. And I think that's all I have for this part of the. I will try to put my information in the chat as well, just so people have my email if people have any questions. And I appreciate very much that you had us here. This is awesome. Thank you very much.
Who was going to speak to the DV stuff? Steve, is that you?
Yes, Commissioner, I was going to speak briefly. And Deputy Wells, please feel free to chime in. I know you've done a lot of work with the domestic violence unit. The domestic violence unit consists of 5 domestic violence and sexual assault detectives who work under the Family and Social Justice section. We also have 2 full-time victim witness advocates also working in the unit. And they are, and actually today was our event over at City Hall by Start by Believing. As you know, Cambridge is one of the, or probably one of the only cities that are doing the Start by Believing campaign. And it started here, and it was a great event. But we do have our domestic violence unit, and our 5 detectives are trained in trauma-informed training, multiple trainings. And I just want to put it out there, if we all know someone who, a friend or a family member that's going through a difficult time, either domestic violence related or anything in that case, please don't hesitate to reach out to us or our victim witness advocates. But we also have community services in place that if a survivor does not want to file a report at this time, absolutely fine. We have community partners that will provide resources and services to you. So please reach out. And if you go to the next slide, please. We have some resources here. These are some of the community partners that we work with in the community. And if you go to the next slide, there should be some contact information. One more, please. Nope. Okay. So that slide right there has information. But again, I'm leaving my information in the chat as well. Don't hesitate. Other than that, Commissioner, I don't know if you want to add something there, or Deputy Wells, if there's anything else to add.
Nope, you guys can keep these slides and feel free to share them with your groups. And if you have any questions, please reach out to us. And if there's, as Steve said before, if you'd like us to come out and give more information about any of our programs, we'd be more happy to do that on a one-on-one basis or small group basis, whatever people need. We really believe wholeheartedly that we want to be a resource to every resident in our community. So thank you so much for having us today.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Elo, Deputy Wells, and Deputy Megalhees for sharing this information and this presentation. We're going to take a moment now to have a question and answer session with the CPD team before they leave. If you have a question, you can put it into the chat. You can raise your hand physically if you would like, or you can raise your hand on Zoom, and we will go through the questions as they come in. We are going to go in order of language and let Amharic questions go first, then we'll go to Haitian Creole, then we will go to Spanish, then we will come back to any English questions. So just be patient with us for a few more minutes as we go through any questions and work with the interpreters in case there are questions that we need to interpret to and from the team.
And I just want to add that I'm going to end the interpretation so that everyone's on the same channel. And if you have a question, you can speak whatever language you want to speak, and the corresponding interpreter will interpret what you've just said. So that is, I'm going to end it now. Okay. So if you'd like to raise your hand to let us know that you have a question, we can go from there. Thank you, Jennifer.
Levez-moi pour dire nos secondes questions.
Does anyone have a question? Please indicate that you do.
ጥያቄ ካለው እንደተባለው ወይ በመጻፍ ወይ ደግሞ እጅ በማውጣት ጥያቄያችሁን መጠየቅ ትችላላችሁ። ጥያቄ ያለው ሰው ካለ
Si vous avez une question à t'embrouiller, dis si vous avez une question, ou qu'à lever mon physiquement, si vous avez une vidéo ou bien ou qu'à utiliser réaction dans Zoom pour qu'à lever mon seconde question.
¿Tienen alguna pregunta? Pueden hacerlo levantando la mano físicamente o pueden usar el icono de levantar la mano por Zoom o lo pueden poner en el chat.
So even if there are questions in the future, Jennifer, if they get in touch with you or Crystal or anybody, we could answer. Sometimes people might not know today what
ምናልባት ጥያቄ
might
ካላችሁ
come
ዛሬ
up,
ጥሩ
but
ነው
we'll
እና
get
ሌላ
the
ጊዜ
questions
ጥያቄ
at
ካለ
any.
ደግሞ
Thank you, Commissioner.
ጠየቅ ትችላላችሁ።
Okay.
Yes.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Que si vous avez une question, après ça, nous allons mettre dans le chat là, et puis après ça, nous allons répondre aux questions nous après, si nous pas demander au premier. Thank you.
Llegarán a tener preguntas también en el futuro, lo pueden hacer contactando a la comisaria.
Okay, thank you. Since there aren't any questions now, we're going to move to the next part of the event, which will be
ጥያቄ ከሌለ ወደሚቀጥለው እንሸጋገራለን።
Thank you,
ጥያቄ ከሌላችሁ
CPD. You can go.
Hey, thank you for having us. We'll see you again.
Thank you. Merci parce que vous avez recevoir nous, on a encore.
እናመሰግናለን።
Ciao, ciao.
Merci. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. So I'm going to ask my interpreters to take us just to pause because the interpretation channels are not set up right now. So you're speaking over each other. And I want to make sure that we're not doing that in the next section. What we're going to do next, and I'm going to turn on the interpretation channels again so everybody can get their instructions in their language, because we're going to go into a breakout room. Lucy, can you please let me know if that's the next step just before I move on?
Yes, correct.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to turn on the interpretation. Everyone, if you want Amharic, you can go to the Amharic room, Spanish in the Spanish room, Haitian Creole in the Haitian Creole room. I'm going to start it now, and then your interpreter will say it.
ትችላላችሁ። ወደ የቋንቋችሁ አሁን ሄዱና
So for those who need English, please click on the English channel so you're not hearing the interpreters. And if you're hearing the interpreters, mute the original audio.
Ay ako ko damarin niya tarog ng yara na andan to kang
Okay, is everyone in their channel? Can I get some head nods that we're okay to proceed before we make the, okay. What I'm gonna do next is if you have indicated your language for Haitian Creole, I'm going to make a breakout room and we're gonna put you in the Haitian Creole breakout room. Amharic and Spanish, you stay on the main floor. So just give us a couple minutes to do this. And then we'll start with Pear and Jennifer can introduce Pear after I've done the breakout room, okay?
Thank you so much, Crystal.
Okay, well, actually you should probably introduce Pear now and then we'll do breakout room so that everybody understands what Pear is. Thank you everyone for the informal event.
Thank you everyone so much. We will now have a presentation from the Political Asylum Immigration Representation or PAIR project. PAIR is a local legal services organization that provides free immigration services to asylum seekers and detained immigrants, as well as providing advocacy and information to the community through their Know Your Rights trainings. We're excited to have these legal experts with us today. Julia Chahersky will be presenting in English and Wadner Og will be presenting in Haitian Creole. So please give us just a moment to set up the breakout room for the Haitian Creole presentation. For other languages, you will remain in this room in your language channel. And I will wait for Crystal to give me the go ahead.
Yes, thank you. If you need Haitian Creole, I'm looking at how to send you there, but it looks like I needed you to have written your name, written the language first, because I'm having a hard time seeing everybody's language choice. So if you want Haitian Creole, if you could rename it with an H before your name, and I can find you faster that way. Let me just delete and start that over. Thank you, that was very helpful. So if you could keep renaming yourself, if you need Haitian Creole, this will, I see that it's helping. Perfect. Okay, I'm going to open the room. And if you're in this room and you should be in Haitian Creole, give me 1 second. It looks like everyone is good. Okay, Jennifer, I think we can go ahead and everyone should be in their English language channels. I think we're good.
Thank you so much, Crystal.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi, and I'm
Should I
waiting.
start or should I just wait for?
I think we need to wait. Let me just make sure. I'm not sure what happened here. You should have, oh, they're not, okay, they're not visible. Let me fix that for you. There we go. Okay, so you have people, you can go ahead and my interpreter will help you with the chat, okay? I'm gonna go back to the main room. Please direct message me if you need anything.
Okay. Ok, nap komanse, nom se Wadner Og, mwen se yon avoka, Bon, et moi-même pas fait droit immigration spécialement, mais pendant plus de droit immigration parce que je fais comme un volontaire. Et je dis à n'a essayé de parler des affaires et comment on est supposé montrer les un sens de puissance et puis depuis le compte dual comme on monde qui vivre dans Massachusetts. Et donc présentation anti genre m'a suivre présentation les fini si nous avons des questions nous allons poser questions.
So today we just want to talk about some immigration basics, your rights when you encounter immigration officials, and how to best prepare yourself and your family in the event that someone is detained by ICE. For ICE is Immigration and Customs Enforcement, and they're the officers that go about enforcing immigration laws in the US. So just some background, what's going on right now. So in Massachusetts, tests, treatments, and vaccinations for COVID is covered regardless if you have insurance and regardless of immigration status. And testing, treatment, and vaccination for COVID is not part of the public charge rule. So you should not be afraid to go get treatment or get vaccinated if you can. We've also compiled a guide on food pantries, healthcare, public benefits, and unemployment. We'll be sharing these slides afterwards as well, so you guys will have access to them. Immigration status impacts one's ability to get unemployment insurance and the federal economic impact payments. So only people with social security numbers can get them as opposed to people with ITINs. And here's also more information if you or someone you know wants to apply. So this new administration has already announced a number of changes to immigration policy through executive orders and policy memos. I'm going to mention some of these recent changes, but it is complicated. Immigration law is very, very complicated. So anyone with individual questions should seek a free legal consultation, and I'll provide resources for those at the end as well. One of the new executive orders calls for immigration enforcement to only focus on certain groups of people, including those who are at risk to public safety or suspected of terrorism. The previous administration targeted anyone who would have been in violation of an immigration law. Another order rescinds the Muslim ban and the African ban, which blocked immigrants from certain Muslim majority countries and certain African countries from entering the US. And there are other orders pertaining to the southern border, including pausing the construction of the border wall. So a number of other proposed changes that we're hearing about in the news. We don't want to speculate on them right now, but we do recommend checking government websites for updates or consulting with an attorney if you have any questions. Another change was the public charge rule, which I'm sure many of you have heard of. It's a rule that applies mostly to people applying to become lawful permanent residents to get a green card. So the government in this rule wants to make sure that if a person comes to live in the US, that person doesn't end up relying on government assistance. And if the government finds a person to be a public charge, this could hurt their immigration case. There's a number of different factors that immigration considers, and one of those is the use of public benefits. The previous administration had expanded the rule to include a lot of public benefits that were not previously included. However, President Biden has rescinded that rule, so we're back to the old rule. So basically that means that things like SNAP, Medicaid, public housing don't count towards the public charge rule anymore. So you shouldn't be afraid to access those resources and be afraid that it's going to hurt your immigration case. Also, not everyone is subject to the rule. So people who are applying for green cards based on a humanitarian form of status. So for example, if you're an asylee or if you're a refugee or have special immigrant juvenile status and you're now applying for a green card, the public charge rule won't apply to you. And next is Daca, which is the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. And this was a program that was designed to help people who came to the US as children and who meet other requirements, including an educational requirement. And individuals who receive Daca are eligible to get a work permit and a social security number. It doesn't create a pathway to citizenship, but the work permits can be life-changing for people. The Daca program has been challenged many times since 2017. USCIS right now, which is the government agency, is accepting renewal Daca applications. They were trying to accept initial ones, but then a court blocked it. But so if anyone has questions, they think that they should be able to, if their Daca status is expiring and they want to renew it, they can do so, and so should speak to an attorney. And the last one I want to talk about is temporary protected status, or TPS. And so TPS is a program where the Secretary of Homeland Security can designate a foreign country for temporary protected status when conditions in that country temporarily prevent the country's nationals from returning safely or in certain circumstances. So for example, like a natural disaster or ongoing war. USCIS, the government agency, can grant TPS to eligible nationals as long as they were already in the US at the time of designation. So for example, the Department of Homeland Security just designated Afghanistan as a TPS eligible country. Anyone who arrives from Afghanistan now won't be able to get it, but anyone who was in the country from before will be able to apply. Individuals with TPS are protected from removal from the United States and can apply for work permits. However, because it is a temporary status, it does not lead to a green card or citizenship. But if you have TPS, you can apply for other forms of relief while you have it. So if you have TPS and you think that you're eligible for asylum, or you think that you're eligible for a green card because a family member is a US citizen or is an LPR, you can apply for that status if you still have TPS, and that might give you an avenue to stay in the US longer. There are always a lot of changes to TPS. Right now, there's 14 countries that are listed here: Afghanistan, El Salvador, Haiti, Honduras, Nepal, Nicaragua, Somalia, Sudan, South Sudan, Syria, Ukraine, Yemen, Venezuela, and Burma are currently in the program. Venezuela, Burma, Afghanistan, and Ukraine were recently added. And we have more resources for like TPS specific questions as well at the end. Does anyone have any questions so far? I don't know. I can't see the chat, but feel free to.
You're good. There's no one in the chat right now.
Okay, thanks. So these are some more resources that are available to you if you want to read up any more information. The immigration landscape is constantly changing. So it's definitely important to stay updated if you can, and also speak to an attorney. And so next, talk about what to do if you meet an immigration officer. So first, I want to talk about basic rights. Everyone living in the United States, no matter who is president and no matter what immigration status they have, has basic rights under the US Constitution. And so some of these rights include the right to remain silent. That means if you're stopped by an immigration officer, you have the right not to answer any questions. Everyone has the right to see a warrant. So if an immigration officer tries to arrest you, you can ask them to see a warrant. Everyone has the right to speak to a lawyer. So if you are arrested, you have a phone call which goes to my next point. Everyone has the right to make a phone call. Obviously, no matter what a person's immigration status is, it's extremely intimidating to be stopped by a uniformed ICE officer, and it can be very difficult to express those rights. So we have these red cards on the slide right here. And I will also make sure that Jennifer has them. We have them in multiple languages and they're bilingual. So on one side is English and the other side, your language of choice. And they explain what a person's rights are. So it says, I'm choosing to exercise my legal rights. I will remain silent and I refuse to answer your questions. If I am detained, I have the right to contact an attorney immediately, and I refuse to sign anything without advice from an attorney. So if someone is very nervous or maybe English is not their first language, a person can instead hand this card to an officer if they wish to express their rights instead of speaking. Another thing I want to mention is that when a person exercises their right to remain silent, it's important to let the ICE officer know what they are doing. So if someone is stopped by an ICE officer and the ICE officer is asking them questions and they're just not responding, the ICE officer may become upset or agitated. So it's better to first inform the officer that you're exercising your right or hand them the red card, and then not answer any questions, just so they know that you're exercising that legal right. And how someone might respond to being stopped by an immigration official might depend on your status.
Li pa implike tout bagay sa yo, tout bénéfice sa yo pa implike, go ba ki lo IBT, sa dépend jon ba la pa implike. Si ti moun nan recevoir school lunch, et la recevoir manger pendant l'école là pa implike, tout bagay sa yo pa implike dans public charge. OK. Gon lot bagay nan loi ki yo rele Daca. Daca li di ko sa c'est ti moun qui te vini avant parents yo te vini men yo te vini sous visa depuis le te gen.
Immigration officers are trying to find out who a person is, what country they're from, and whether they have legal status in the United States. And the answers to those questions can be enough for immigration to know who a person is and put them in deportation proceedings. So even if you don't have status, you still might wish to be silent. And obviously the most important thing is to know your rights and know that you have the option to exercise them. So next, I want to talk about what happens if an ICE officer comes to your home. So you're at home and an officer knocks on your door. Always ask who is at the door before opening the door to anyone. If the person at the door says it's immigration, the person doesn't have to allow the officer into their home unless the officer provides a warrant that's signed by a judge. Opening the door is giving permission to enter. So once the person enters the home, once the immigration officer enters the home, they can look around. So if an immigration officer comes to your home, they knock on the door, you can slide the Know Your Rights card under the door or hold it up against the window. And you're going to want to ask to see a warrant signed by a judge. So you can ask the officer to slide it under the door or hold it up against the window, and look at it carefully to make sure that it's signed by a judge and is issued by a court. An ICE warrant is different than a judicial warrant, and I'll show you the differences next. But if a person cannot read English, you can memorize the word judge in order to tell the difference between the two types of warrants. So again, the only two ways that ICE can enter your home is either with their permission, so opening the door or giving your verbal consent, or with a judicial warrant signed by a judge. And the judicial warrant must have the person's name and be signed by a judge. And this is an example. See, the most important part here is at the bottom, very, very bottom, it says signature of judge and then is signed by the judge. And why is this so important? Well, it's because ICE has its own type of warrant that they print in their office and they sign it themselves. And an ICE warrant does not give ICE permission to enter and search your home. So this is what an ICE warrant looks like. Here you can see at the bottom, it says signature of authorized immigration officer. I'm going to go back to compare. Here, signature of judge, judicial warrant. Here, signature of authorized immigration officer. This is an ICE warrant. This is not a judicial warrant, so it doesn't give ICE permission to enter. If a person asks ICE whether they have a warrant and they say yes,
Haïti, Honduras, Nepal, Nicaragua, Somalia, Soudan, qui nan ba la. L'autre gade gon groupe ti pays, Nicaragua, Honduras, Honduras, El Salvador, ti pays sa yo te non groupe qui te sous yo te allé dans tribunal yo sous administration Trump. Ba la te rive bien loin de que Boston et machin c'était dans groupe là nous avons total 12 000 haïtiens qui résident dans Massachusetts et non, bon total 12 000 résidents dans Massachusetts à cause du PS, bien quoi et Massachusetts en 2500 on va comme ça et les ou aller dans tribunal yo aller sous yo gain où il y a juge la mandé pour remettre TPS back et juge a demandé au TPS yo te gon accord été fait avant avec Trump yo fait ça qu'on y a TPS back so TPS a back qu'on y a moun yo devine bon bagay pour le président Biden monter extender ça puis son côté gon l'autre bagay qui était passé en Haïti et qui était passé en Haïti à cause des présidents et Jovenel Moïse était tué
I says, look, we just need to ask you some questions. What is your name, please? And the person says, I will not open the door without a signed warrant from a judge. Slides red card under the door. You have the same right to remain silent if you're stopped in a car. It's important to note that if you remain silent, it doesn't mean that you won't be arrested, but it does mean that ICE will not get that basic information about who you are and what country you come from and what your status is, which could put you in removal proceedings. So a person has the right to ask the ICE officer if they're under arrest or if they're free to leave. If the person is not under arrest, they should say that they would like to leave. It's very important to stay calm and not to run or resist arrest. Also, people should keep their hands where the officer can see them. If you're going to pull out the red card, make sure you tell the ICE officer that you're grabbing this red card. So, and the right to remain silent also includes not communicating any information. So that also includes you don't have to give fingerprints if you're asked. So unless you're arrested, the ICE does not have any right to take your fingerprints. Different local law enforcement agencies have different policies about cooperating with ICE. We have a great police department in the city of Cambridge we just heard from, and Cambridge is a sanctuary city, so you don't have to worry about that there. And a lot of places in Massachusetts, you don't have to worry about that. However, Customs and Border Protection, which is another government agency, they have the authority to enforce immigration laws within 100 miles of the border. And this includes the border with Canada. So 100 miles from the border includes most of New England, including New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine. And specifically in New Hampshire, not as much during this administration, but there have been a lot of arrests in and around New Hampshire specifically. So if a person doesn't have immigration status, they might want to avoid traveling to neighboring states, specifically New Hampshire, where sanctuary cities like Cambridge are less of a thing. And what if ICE comes to someone's workplace? And we've seen this happen in the past, where ICE will show up to a workplace and basically see who has immigration status or not. So a lot of times if ICE comes to a workplace, the officers will ask people to stand in lines based on immigration status. So they'll say, everyone without immigration status stand over here, and everyone with immigration status stand over there. But remember, the right to remain silent includes not communicating information in any way. So if someone is ever in that situation, they have the right to stand in the middle of the room and not join any line. So they ask people to stand on their line, you can stand right in the middle. So you're not saying whether you have or you don't have immigration status. And if asked why they didn't join a line, the person can say that they're exercising their right to remain silent, or if they have one of those red cards with them, they can show that to the officer as well. It's important to stay calm. I know these situations are very, very nerve-wracking, but try to stay calm, make sure not to run away or to resist arrest. And you're always free to ask the ICE officer if you're under arrest or free to leave. If they say that you're not under arrest, you can say that you would like to leave and leave calmly. Okay. So I'll just skip this one because we still have to get through. So next, I'll talk about family preparedness. So, if a person is arrested by ICE, their cell phone and other documents are taken away from them. So this makes it very important to memorize phone numbers for family members or friends that you trust, even if it's just one phone number. If a person does not have legal status, they should think about where they want to store identification documents, such as passports. A passport alone is enough evidence for ICE to prove who a person is and where they came from, which can lead ICE to arrest a person and try to deport them. And ICE officers often look for people's passports in their home. So that's also why it's super important, not only to think about where to put these documents, but also why it's so important not to open the door to ICE unless they have that warrant signed by a judge. Collecting documents of physical presence is also important and can be helpful if you're arrested by ICE. So if you've been, say you've been in the US for 5 years now, maybe collecting documents such as any bills that you might pay. If you have kids that go to school, maybe proof of enrollment, just things to show that you've been in the US since a certain time. It's also important to think about children, especially school-age children. Schools are very strict about who they let pick up children, and rightfully so. So that's why it's important to make sure that all contact information is updated and that there is another trusted adult who could pick up the children if someone has been arrested by ICE. A person may also want to register the birth of their US citizen born children with their consulates, and they might want to get US passports for those children as well. Obviously, these are very personal decisions, and if you aren't sure about what to do, you can always talk to an immigration attorney. I can't give you legal advice today, but we do want to emphasize that there are resources available. There are also 2 legal forms that a person could consider if the person is worried about being detained. There's the caregiver affidavit authorization and the temporary agent authorization. It's of course super important, again, to talk to an attorney before signing any document. And these are important personal decisions, but these are forms that are available for you in case you're worried about someone being picked up by ICE and you're worried about the care of your children. Okay, next I'll talk about like overview of the immigration process. The immigration process is very confusing. So first, some people apply to a government agency for status, and other people have to defend against deportation in immigration court after having contact with an ICE officer or a border patrol officer. One thing I want to mention before we get further into it is that people have a right to an attorney in immigration court, but the court won't assign one like in criminal court. So in criminal court, if you can't afford an attorney, the state will provide one for you. If you can't afford an attorney in immigration court,
En la corte migratoria tiene que buscar
የፔር ፕሮጀክት ያግዛል ሌሎችንም ሊያግዙ
find an attorney on your own that maybe will give you a reduced fee. If someone has previously interacted with immigration but was released or not detained, they'll get a court date in the mail. Another way to check when a person's court date is to call the court's automated hotline, listed right here, this 1-800 number. You don't have to talk to anyone. It's just like a robot. You just follow the prompts. You'll need your file number, or what's called an A number. It's a 9-digit number that immigration will have assigned to that person, and it will be at the top of any single form that immigration gives to them. It's extremely important to keep a person's address updated with immigration in order to ensure that they receive information about upcoming court dates. If someone fails to attend court, the judge can order that person deported in absentia or without their presence. That's why it's super important to update your address. And that can be done online if you just, the form's called the EOIR 33, but if you just Google like change of address, immigration court, it should pop up. Or you can go down to the immigration court to do it in person, and the immigration court in Boston is in the JFK Federal Building in Government Center. As I just mentioned, going to court is super, super important. A person does not, if someone doesn't go to a scheduled court date, the judge can order them deported without them being there. A lot of people, get the court date and they're scared because they haven't found a lawyer yet and think that if they don't show up, maybe nothing will happen to their case, but that's not true. If someone doesn't go to court, they could be deported. So if someone has court and they don't have a lawyer yet, that person should go to court and just tell the judge that they would like more time to find a lawyer. It's the judge's decision whether to grant additional time, but most of the time they will grant it. I've never seen a judge not give someone more time to find a lawyer. So definitely go and ask for a lawyer. The judges also have a list of the legal service providers in Massachusetts, so you can ask to see that and then start reaching out to organizations. So yeah, and an old deportation order is always connected to someone, even if it was more than 20 years ago. Generally speaking, a person has the right to see an immigration judge unless they have previously been deported by a judge or through the expedited removal process. This means that most people who are arrested by immigration authorities will have the right to see a judge and try to fight their deportation. And there are many different ways to fight deportation. And anyone with specific questions about this should contact an immigration attorney. If people have the right to see an immigration judge, they may have defenses from deportation that will allow them to remain in the US lawfully, and you have the right to file any applications for which you're eligible. People who have been previously ordered deported will not automatically have the right to see an immigration judge again. So it's easier for ICE to deport people who already have deportation orders. So if you think that you have a deportation order already, definitely talk to an attorney. If a person is afraid to return to their home country, it's very important that they express this fear to immigration officers. And some people released from immigration detention may have to go to ICE check-ins in Burlington, Massachusetts, or another ICE office, depending on where they live. The ICE check-ins are different than going to court. If you have a check-in, try to talk to an attorney. I think right now as well, a lot of the check-ins are still being done remotely, so you can either email or call. But yeah, the check-ins are different than going to court. So on this slide, you'll see some of the different types of immigration relief that may be available to a person. Immigration law is very complicated, and there are a lot of different ways that a person can fight their deportation. Some people have a pathway to immigration status and might not even know it. So these are some of the ways that people can fight their deportation and also just apply for status, even if they're not in removal proceedings. Asylum is the first one, fear of country to the country of origin, but there are many different types. Okay, so what can a family do after an ICE arrest? So first of all, I want to be very, very clear that a person without immigration status should not visit a detainee. In order to go visit a detainee, a person needs to leave an ID with the jail. And if you don't have status and you left your ID with the jail, you might be arrested yourself. So definitely only someone with immigration status should visit. If a person is arrested, either the person or their family can call PAIR where I work, and I'll give my number, a lawyer or their consulate if it's safe to do so. Please remember to tell whoever you call where you or your family member is being held. There's currently only one detention facility in Massachusetts, but they could be, if they're transferred somewhere else, there's also one in Rhode Island and one in New Hampshire. It's helpful to share the person's complete name, their immigration number, so that A number, the 9-digit number we talked about before, and their date of birth. And if someone has access to their personal belongings, any immigration and criminal documents would be very helpful for an attorney. If a family member was arrested by ICE, but you don't know where they are, you can use the Detainee Locator. Included the website here. You just enter the person's name and their country of origin, and it'll tell you what detention facility they're being placed in. If their name doesn't show up, you can always try different spelling variations. Sometimes they spell people's names wrong, but that's a resource that's available as well. So worst case scenario, someone is arrested by ICE, how can they get released? One way that people get released is on bond. So bond is like bail in criminal court. It's an amount of money that someone pays in order to be released from detention. Bond is really important because it means that someone's going to be able to reunite with their family while they fight their immigration case. But not everyone is eligible for a bond, unfortunately, and bond eligibility is constantly changing. So I'm not going to go into the specifics here, but if you or someone you know is arrested by ICE, it's very, very, very important to talk to an attorney and see if they're eligible for bond and try to get them out of ICE detention. The immigration judge considers a number of factors when deciding whether to set a bond and how much to set it for, including ties to the community, family ties, any past history with the police or the criminal system. It's might be a good idea to have some money set aside in case a person needs to pay a bond, and only people with immigration status can go and pay the bond. The lowest possible amount that an immigration judge can order is $1,500. However, judges often set a bond that is much higher than that. We typically see bonds between $4,000 to $12,000. They can be higher, depending, but that's the general range. And it's a good idea to have someone in mind if you're scared, and have a plan for how they would pay the bond if someone was to be detained. And so where can you go for help? First, we want everyone to know that there are people out there, unfortunately, who do take advantage of immigrants who are anxious about their immigration status. In a lot of countries, an Ontario and an attorney are the same. Here in the US, they're different. Notarios can't give legal advice or notaries. Only licensed attorneys or accredited representatives can do that. So there are some people out there who are notaries and pretend that they can give legal advice and unfortunately take advantage of people. So make sure that you that it is an attorney. Another thing to keep in mind is that if someone's had contact with the police or has a criminal history, they should make sure to talk to an immigration attorney that has a specialized knowledge of the immigration consequences of crimes. And it's always okay to ask an attorney about their experience. And what else could be harmful? So many people are surprised to hear that the government not only has access to what is posted on the internet, but things that have been deleted. And oftentimes in immigration court, or we've seen in immigration court, social media postings being used against a person in their case. So it's important to be cautious about what is on social media, especially anything that could be perceived as gang involvement. Suspected or perceived gang involvement could be harmful to an immigration case. And there was a case in Boston of a teenager who had posted on Facebook repping a gang, wasn't actually in a gang, and he ended up getting deported because the government used that Facebook post against him to allege that he was in a gang when that wasn't the case. So definitely just be careful about what you post online. A lot of people ask about the 10-year law, which they believe is a law that allows people to get a green card after being in the US for 10 years. Unfortunately, it is too good to be true. There's no law that says that just because a person has been in the US for 10 years, that person has the right to a green card or citizenship. There is a form of relief related to being here for 10 years, but it's extremely complicated and it only applies to people who are already in immigration court proceedings. So in addition to being in deportation proceedings, the person must show that an immediate family member who is a US citizen or green card holder would suffer exceptional and extremely unusual hardship if the person was deported. It's a very high standard and the cases are pretty hard to win. So just to be aware too, if an attorney is telling you about this 10-year law, it's not a real thing. Here are some resources available if you have any children or teenagers or anyone looking to go back to school for financial aid for immigrants specifically, and scholarship guides. The Student Immigrant Movement is also a really great resource, and they have a pretty active chapter here in Boston. So another resource if anyone is looking to go to college. The Boston Mayor's Office usually hosts free legal screening clinics the first and third Wednesday of every month during COVID. And I believe this is still the case. All consultations are by telephone and you don't need to be a Boston resident to attend this clinic. They have attorneys and various interpreters. Similarly, the city of Cambridge and De Novo has screening clinics that I believe are also still virtual, and the number is there as well. So you can check either of these out. And here are a lot of the legal resources available in Massachusetts. So like I mentioned, you don't have the right to a free attorney in immigration court, but all of these organizations provide free immigration representation to Massachusetts residents. And so if you or someone you know wants to speak to an immigration attorney, they can reach out to any of these organizations by calling the numbers. I think most offices are closed to the public right now, but you can call and leave a message if someone doesn't answer. Another thing I want to note is that legal service organizations are very busy right now. So there might be a chance that someone doesn't get back to you right away. You might be wondering why it's taking so long. Just know that like we've heard you, we're like working our way. Someone's going to get back to you soon. And I would recommend calling as many organizations as possible just to, increase your chances of getting help, because we do want to help you. And these are all the things available. I work for the PAIR Project again, so we help mostly asylum seekers and people who are detained. Kids in Need of Defense is a great resource if for kids under the age of 18. And then these are also really great organizations as well. And if you do have a green card and you think you might be eligible for citizenship, Project Citizenship is also a really great organization. Here are some other legal resources for non-immigration questions. So
yo gon numéro mettez sur concours ou gen doit rele numéro pour contacter qui là ou gen droit qui là ou gen pour aller dans tribunal qui date ou gen pour aller dans tribunal les fini gon l'autre numéro qui gagne ou ka checker pour si gon on case qui ouvert sous nom tout bagay ça yo et
Thank you so much, Julia, and thank you for doing that in such a condensed time period. That was really wonderful. Thank you. We are going to open it up now to any questions. The Haitian Creole presentation in the breakout room will stay in the breakout room for their Q&A, but we will bring the Amharic and Spanish channels back into the main room, and then we can do questions and answers with Julia if you have any questions at this time. One thing just to mention, the questions, please keep them very general. Please don't ask any questions about your specific status or any specific issues. We can answer general questions, but we can't provide direct legal advice here. We did put some information in the chat, and we will share it via email after this session about legal services organizations that can provide legal advice. So just a disclaimer there before we open up for any questions.
I'm going to go ahead and end the interpretation so that everyone's on the same channel. Thank you, everyone, for your wonderful patience. You're all, go ahead.
Sorry. I was just going to say too, if anyone does have specific questions, they can always reach out to Pear. Our number is on the slides, or I can give my email as well. And you can reach out to me and I can refer you to someone as well.
ምናልባት ጥያቄ ካላችሁ ቴሌፎን እንሰጣችኋለሁ፣ ኢሜይል እንሰጣችኋለሁ እና ጥያቄ ካላችሁ ይህንን መጠቀም ትችላላችሁ፣ ፔር መጠቀም ትችላላችሁ።
Si alguien llegara a tener alguna pregunta legal específica, voy a poner mi información en el chat para contactarse conmigo y yo puedo conectarlos con un representante legal.
እንዳንናገር እኮ ሚውት እያደረጉን እንዳለ ሲንገሯቸው
እንደገና አስመውን በደንብ
እንዳንጠይቅ አንዳንድ ያልገባን ነገር ሚውት እያደረጉን
ምን እያደረጉን ነው?
ሚውት እያደረጉን
well, in order for us to ask, I'm being muted and ግን ጥያቄ ያሉት?
አዎ ማለት ጥያቄው ይሄኛውን ወደ እንግሊሹ ወደ አማርኛ ተረጎምልኝ አልቻለም እና ዘይት እንዴት አድርገን ምንስ ራሳችን እንትኑ ትራንስሌት ሊሆንልን ስላልቻለ በምን እንስማው በምን እንረዳው እንጂ ብዙ ጥያቄ ሊኖረን ይችላል በቋንቋችን ቢሆን
well, is there any way you can translate this into Amharic so that we can have a chance to read and understand, and then maybe any follow-up questions?
Yeah, I can. I believe that I have copies of the slides in Amharic. I can make sure that I send them to Jennifer so that there's copies.
ምናልባት ሊኖር ይችላል በአማርኛ የተተረጎመ ሊኖር ይችላል ይሄ ዶክመንት እና ለጄኒፈር ሰጣታለሁ አይቼ ሰጣታለሁ ከሷ መውሰድ ይቻላል ይኖራል
ሼር ካደረጋችሁልን እኛ እንጠቀመዋለን
Thank you very much. If we share, I'm sure we're going to use it. Thank you very much. ትክክል ፈጠን ያለ ነበር። ሌላ ጥያቄ ካለ ማለት ጥሩ ጥያቄ ነው የቅድሙ
አንድ ጊዜ ቅዱስ ስልኬን ያዝና ከዛ በኋላ ለኔ ትደውልልኛለህ 617 233 8512
I believe she's giving the first speaker Kudus is giving her phone number so that he can communicate and maybe help in this area.
ያስከው ቅዱስ ስልኬን
እስኪ አሁን ወረቀት ይዣለሁ አሁን
617
እሺ
233
She's giving me
233
her phone number.
8512
Phone number.
8512 ስሟ
ደውልልኝ።
እሺ
ሌላ
Is there-
ጥያቄ ካለ
I wanted to see if there was anyone else with a question.
¿Quién más tiene alguna pregunta?
A quick question. Julia, are you able to just say a little bit more about kind of the intake process with your program?
Yeah, definitely. So
Moment, sorry to interrupt. Before you respond, Julia, can we translate that question into Amharic and then to Spanish? Sarah, do you mind repeating your question?
Sure. My question was if she could say a little bit more about the intake process in at her organization.
La pregunta es si puede hablar un poquito más del proceso de admisión a cómo hacen este proceso en su organización.
Could we have that in Amharic also?
You mean translated into Amharic?
Yes, please. Just
Hello?
that we're asking about the.
Yeah, can you repeat? I thought it was in a different
No.
language to.
The
Can you repeat the question?
The question is for Julia to talk about the payer intake.
The intake program, yeah? እንግዲህ ጁሊያን ደግሞ በዚህ በኢንቴክ ፕሮግራም ላይ አንዳንድ ሀሳብ ካላቸው የምትለውጡት ነገር ካለ በሱ አድርጎ የሚደርስ ነገር ካለ ነው። ጥያቄው ከሌላ አካባቢ የመጣ ጥያቄ ነው።
Okay, great. So I think most days we do have someone like assigned to answering any calls. If someone doesn't answer, you could just leave a message and someone will get back to you. The first step is what we call pre-screening. So just getting basic like background information, basically.
Background information. Oh, yeah.
Sorry.
I was being simultaneous. So. Okay, got it.
Sorry, and then after the pre-screening, someone will get back to you about a like further intake. So the intake usually takes about an hour. And for example, if it's for an asylum case, talking about the reasons why you left your home country, why you're afraid to return, etc. And then after the intake is done, we take that back to pair, and then just depending on like capacity constraints and like relief available, we will make a decision on whether we can take your case or not, and then someone will be back in contact. And also based on like placement, someone will get back in contact and tell you like with a final decision.
ይህን በተመለከተ አንድ ሰው ሲደውል ይህንን የሚከታተል ሰው አለ። ስልኩን ይቀበላል፣ ጥያቄያችሁን ከተቀበለ በኋላ በእያንዳንዱ ኬዝ ባይ ኬዝ እናየዋለን። ይህን በተመለከተ የኛ ድርጅት ሁኔታውን አይቶ እኛ ልንሰጠው የምንችለው ጥቅማጥቅሞችን እንገልጻለን። በእኛ ላይ ካለ ጥቅማጥቅሞችን የምታገኙበት መንገድ በመከታተል እንሰራለን። ስለዚህ ዋናው የመጀመሪያና ዋናው ግን መደወል ነው። ስትደውሉ ይህንን ኢንፎርሜሽን የሚወስድ ከእናንተ የሚፈልገውን ኢንፎርሜሽን ከወሰደ በኋላ በእያንዳንዱ ኢንፎርሜሽን ከእነሱ ከሚሰጡት ሰርቪስ ጋር የሚዛመድ እና ያ በዛ መሰረት ደግሞ እነሱ እርዳታውን የሚሰጡ ከሆነ በመከታተል የሚሰራ ስራ ነው ለማለት ነው።
El proceso es, primero le pedimos que llame, la mayoría de los días tenemos una persona que está trabajando contestando las llamadas. Si es el caso que no le contestan, por favor deje un mensaje y una persona va a regresar la llamada, se va a contactar con usted. El primer paso es la información de historial, es prácticamente preguntando la información básica. El segundo paso es cuando programamos lo que llamamos la entrevista de entrada, donde en esta entrevista por dar un ejemplo, si usted está aplicando por asuntos de asilo político, se le preguntaría información de por qué no quiere regresar o por qué no puede regresar a su país. La tercera, después de la entrevista, de esta entrevista de 1 hora, el tercer paso es que debido a la capacidad que tengamos disponibles, tomamos una decisión donde le vamos a informar a usted si tomamos el caso o no.
Thank you. Are there any other questions?
ሌላ ጥያቄ አላችሁ? ሌላ ጥያቄ አለ?
¿Hay alguna otra pregunta?
I do want to share that the Cambridge Public Library has a free social worker who can help connect you to any of these organizations we have discussed tonight. One of our social workers is here, so you can walk into any library and say you want to make an appointment with our team, and we would be happy to connect you.
አንዱ ሰርቪስ ከሚሰጠው አንዱ ፓብሊክ ላይብረሪ ነው። በፓብሊክ ላይብረሪ በተለይ ሶሻል ወርከር አለ። አሁን የተነጋገርናቸው በሙሉ የሚያገናኝ ነው። ምናልባትና ጥያቄ ካላችሁ ወደ አቅራቢያችሁ
résidence permanente, les gens ont nos problèmes et bon, faire attention à ça, ils ont concédé tatou et gens ont présenté tout sur social media, faut faire attention à ça. Bon, bah, qui est l'autre 10 ans, sauter là devant 10 ans. Il n'y a pas une loi qui dit, pas une loi qui dit ça, et qui dit que ça, débuter là pendant 10 ans, ou gain droit pour vivre citoyen américain ou bien pour une résidence. Son façon, son en bas à l'allié, son scam, et faire attention à ça, et parce que sous déjà, et sous déportation, bah, ça doit compliqué et 10 ans, bah, et bah, ça, son bail qui va presque exister sous 10 ans, ou bien 4 ans, c'est pas comme ça, il fonctionne. Il faut qu'on faire attention en pile, et il faut qu'on faire attention en pile à cause de ça, parce que normalement, si on est ici, au mari, au monde, ou bien petit ou bien 21 ans, il y a bon résidence, ou bien madame ou c'est citoyen américain, bon résidence. Mais 10 ans, il est appliqué à comment pour faire, les finis, il faut que c'est exceptionnel et
ለተለያዩ በጣም እናመሰግናለን። ይህንን የተወያየንበት በሙሉ ኢሜይል እናደርጋለን፣ ኮንታክታችሁ አለን። ለሁሉም ግን በመምጣታችሁ እናመሰግናለን። አስተርጓሚዎችን በዚህ አጋጣሚ ሳናመሰግን አናልፍም። Thank you.
Muchas gracias a todos por unirse esta noche. Gracias por estar aquí, por escucharnos. Le damos un agradecimiento especial a Pierre por habernos acompañado, a la Comisión de Derechos Humanos, al Departamento de Policías de Cambridge, y también les quiero dejar saber que vamos a enviar todos los recursos de esta noche por un correo electrónico.
Thank you. Good night.
Feliz noche.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good night.
A lot of information. Thank
Good
you.
night.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Relevant.
much.
Relevant information.
Thank you. Lucy, the other breakout room is still going. So I'm uncertain what we should do.
Yeah, I don't think we can leave because it will end their
Yeah.
room.
Yeah, exactly.
I think if you leave, it ends, unfortunately.
Yeah. So I can jump into the other room and then you guys can go.
Can we leave?
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, please.
Oh, yes. Thank you so much. Really,
All
thank you
right,
for your
all right.
time.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
really nice.
And I'll follow up an email tomorrow for everybody. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Bye. So yeah, Lucy, please go home. I will jump into the breakout room until that's done.
Okay, really, thank you for everything. You did an amazing job with the.
Yes, go rest. We're done. We're good.
Have a good night. Take care.
You too. Bye.
All those things. So, Skounia, si nous avons question, ma prend question et bon, d'ailleurs me connais si nous avons question, car répondre, essayer de répondre à votre question.
Merci pour l'intervention. Moi c'est Elio Fernabella. Moi-même moi c'est moi gagne un pending asylum, ça un statut et pending asylum. Donc, moi, censé, pas tant ou toi élaborer sur ça, et besoin d'une assistance légale. Alors, pas pour qu'il y ait moyen personnel pour me embaucher un avocat, mais dans le monde qui organise ça là, il y a pro bono et que me connaît plus de livres pour connaître qui ça
et per project là et c'est lui même qui ça fait yo fait un interview ensemble avec moun yo regarde yo demande si moun a travail yo prend quelques information les fini sous des papier dans mon yo prend papier d'après yo chercher un avocat qui volontaire pour aider d'ailleurs pour connecter ensemble avec yo et peut-être m'ba connait si Cambridge c'est bostonien et m'ba connait si Cambridge il gagne spécialement per project là c'est lui-même ça c'est excusez-moi c'est avec l'information ça veut dire si ouais ou attendre des présentations ça veut dire yo caïdo même sur Cambridge yo caïdo tout so m'da conseiller vous connecter ensemble avec yo gen moun qui traduit en créole tout bail ça yo.
Okay.
Et puis, il y a un bon avocat qui est spécialisé dans ça même, qui fait ça.
Est-ce que, donc, c'est interprète là qui, est-ce que vous avez information ça par contre, vous avez un chat là pour mon pour connecter avec eux ou bien est-ce
que numéro 1 c'est 617.
Allez. Wait a minute. 617
742
617 742
92 96
92 96 617 742 92 96.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Et normalement, est-ce que dans quel groupe vous êtes?
Qui groupe ça veut dire?
Qui l'a entré ici?
Oh, je suis entré ici en 2016.
Oh, 2016. OK. Ou pas sous entré ici, ou pas fil de pièce à tout?
Oui, gon avocat qui sous dossier qui cap bailler pour moi.
OK. Ou suppose fil de pièce à tout parce que de ça aussi des bails différents, des parallèles.
OK.
Yeah. Parce que ça te passe c'est des monde et soit asile politique sous Trump, les Trump vinn monter al pas ba moun yo document.
OK.
Moun yo travail li te retiré yo, ben si moun nan te gen asile te gen tipe ça t'a besoin document pour le travail parce que yo dou c'est temps pour temps on pas que ba te changer tout ba yo net.
Moi j'ai forme de clair que moi te gen 4 travail, même t'es tellement prend pression sur administration Trump là, on pas voyer renouveler 4 travail là.
C'est ça pas bon et gen les moun yo pas bon comme ça. Sous te gen déjà c'est pour et ça yo te gon décision depuis yo te fait décision déjà yo dit l'expirer et raison qui fait au DP de extender là c'est élection t'a venu yo connecté gon paquet moun haïtien chita Miami yo pas jamais vle pour camper pour terminer pendant l'élection ou bien avant l'élection. Tu es obligé de mettre après, jusqu'à 20 juin, après l'élection. Il y a des décisions, c'est des gens qui te couru aller. Depuis ce film, sous temporaire, ça est difficile. Ça, ça fait qu'on va pas bon, c'est difficile. Si on monde vient demander date d'ouvrir l'aller, parce que si on a un bagage dossier dans derrière ou un crime criminel, pas la conseiller au faire. Parce que lui a une opportunité pour vivre pour déporter. Mais depuis c'est renouvelé, après renouvelé, même si c'est sous chopité, ouvrir l'aller.
Sommes tellement prendre l'impression et m'pas renouveler kata donc m'a besoin m'bral un numéro ça pour que mes contacts ensemble avec vous pour me garder qui ça pour me faire et parce que m'ai quatre travail là c'est expérience m'ai quatre travail là.
OK.
Alors l'aime garder sur site là yo dit que sous qui t'es supposé voir avant 6 mois avant dernier 6 mois donc 6 mois passé. Est-ce que vous voyez ça fait pas contre ça pour me faire?
Non, tout ça, il devine renouveler, il mettre jusqu'en juillet, il vient renouveler pour extendre jusqu'en 20 juin 2020. Donc, janvier 2020, après, bien côté vient extendre juste en juillet 2020, comme ça. Et puis, toutes ces bails, toutes ces politiques, parce qu'il n'y a pas de blé, il y a des baisers Florida. Il pas de bail Florida.
OK. Merci un peu. Merci un peu.
Je devais terminer, et ça fait pas de terminer.
Moi, j'ai une question avant de me déplacer, s'il vous plaît, tout court. Est-ce que tu as un monde qui a besoin d'un avocat, en référence pour un avocat pour famille, pour qui règle affaire by famille? Comme si pour entrer famille à Haïti.
OK. Un numéro catholique charité ou bien yo gen rediriger sur l'autre et bon groupe et ça dépend si moun parce que tout bail ça yo li basé si moun n'a travail si moun ka pour un avocat
family immigration law basically.
Yeah. Et bon ma boîte de numéro ma boss 617 464 8100. Ça, c'est Catholique Charité.
OK.
Et puis, mon lot, c'est Greater Boston Legal Services. So, c'est 617 603 1808.
Thank you.
Yeah, tu sais, pour les ça, au début, ouais, mon n'a pas éligible, il y a fond référence, il y a pas mon quelques bon avocat qui fait immigration spécialement. Ou bien, ou bien, Google Boston Bar Association. Allez, bon, chercher numéro 1. Boston Bar Association, il doit demander un bon avocat et il a besoin d'un avocat immigrant, avocat, il doit un numéro.
Okay. Boston Bar Association. Okay, I can find that.
Depuis on les Boston Bar Association, you can Google, depuis on les numéros à un référent, y a connecté là un avocat, j'ai besoin d'un avocat immigration, y a connecté là.
All right, thank you so much.
Okay.
Bonsoir.
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 Moi, j'ai une question, s'il vous plaît, bien vite. Moi-même, je suis haïtien citizen. Moi, rempli forme pour famille Haïti. Ça va le 9 ans. Depuis que je fil, je recevoir papier qui dit que je recevoir application qu'on paye pour application et puis je recevoir approval et puis depuis là ça me pas jamais tendé rien encore. On connaît gain Covid, on connaît situation Haïti, on comprend Jean ba yoye.
Ça qui l'âge bon yo gain?
Oh de ces frères sœurs
oh, bah, ça va temps.
Oui, on dit que c'est 12 ans.
15.
Non, c'est pour ça qu'on avocat parce que moi, j'ai fait qui te file pour frère, il était majeur, mais pour avocat, il a 10, 11, 12 ans, il est venu sur 11 ans.
Bon, pas les anciens, bah, qu'on y a, tout bas, il y a slow, qu'on y a.
Oh, qu'on y a, c'est 15 ans.
Mon normal après tout ça et bah yo slow parce que c'est kounya y a essayé pour si yo te ka moderniser process là, pour te ka spédier tout ba yo tout monde c'est bon m'pa dire ça, il plus facile pour monde saute Haïti de façon l'autre façon que c'est sous résidence. Surtout si moun nan grand, si moun nan marié, il prend pas de temps.
OK.
Et c'est ça qu'a fait gon numéro, ou carré le numéro, mais soit pour avocat là. Celle-ci dossier a ta supposé bagay, il toujours bon l'autre avocat, mais avocat il doit pas faire rien pour vous.
Non, parce que moi te gen un bel film qui te gen tan gen 30.
On va parler à qui l'époque, c'est débat différent. Est-ce que c'est pas dans
parce que moi là nous gen mon takou nous font avocat même les yo pas comme 15 ans ça.
Bon, est-ce que c'est avant Chop ou bien après Chop?
Avant.
OK, c'est débat différent. Chop m'kadou ça c'est pas politique pas faire Chop craser immigration système là. Mais quoi dernière fois qu'on combien qui gagne qui ba y a process au million oui. Non, souffle Boston Bar Association demandé pour une immigration demandé pour sous carifé avec un avocat immigration mais si c'est ça frère bah kounya c'est bah ça 15 ans quoi hein. C'est changer pour changer système là.
Bon et puis moi dernière qui gagne peut-être pour 4 dernière là il gagne 35 ans. Mais mademoiselle lui-même était Brésil, mademoiselle vini là en 2016, mademoiselle gagne CPS, mademoiselle gagne un papier travail. Quand il y a la lettre qu'on vient monter, il pas renouveler papier travail pour eux encore, pendant Biden bail là.
Non, lui-même qui te choisi pour pas renouveler.
Non, il était
renouveler.
Non, nous t'allons renouveler parce qu'il y a un bon avocat. Boston catholique Charles, c'est pas nos avocats. Et qui va nous l'avocat ça, il n'y a pas de d'activité, il n'y a pas de fil pour lui, non? Il n'y a pas de CPS, non? Parce que c'était Brésil, mademoiselle D, l'entrée ici.
Ah, mais ça dépend qui l'a dérivé. Ça dépend qui l'a dérivé ici à l'époque.
Obama, et dernier mandat Obama.
Ça dépend qui l'a dérivé ici, parce que TPS Obama t'es là, faut qu'on
non, c'est pas TPS, c'est pas Obama qui t'es
2016, mon 2016, je pas éligible pour TPS.
Non, mais pas le papier travail, ça, c'est pas TPS, c'était en Californie, l'était dans prison immigration Californie.
Il était Kimberly, la gueule, la fini, il mettait sous papier.
Il papier 3 ans, il papier travail 3 ans, il était pas le papier travail 3 ans. Yeah, social, tout pareil.
Non, mais pour ça, c'est un nombre de programmes qui ont monté. Et pour les catch and release. C'est un nombre plutôt immigration qui est bon, l'ilago, qui est plus facile pour sous-baiser résidence ou marier un monde, ou bien un petit tout par résidence, c'est plus facile pour ajuster sous ici, que sous entrer, ou par contre ici. Yo pas qu'on dans pays à la fini leur pour résidence ça devient plus difficile.
Non, yo connaît parce que c'est yo qui te balle tout.
Non, et comme ça, il le caché de milice. Et comme ça, il choprele.
Yeah, parce qu'elle devine un apprêtement pour aller devant juge et puis en février 2020, on croit même côté Covid tout bagaille cancel, l'avocat dit tout bagaille fermé, pas ka faire qu'on y a là. Yo vinn
extender tout papier qu'on y a, tout papier extendé à cause des dealers qui gagnent. Souvent, on dit tout le monde qui a papier dans mais depuis l'expirer, il a fonctionné sur lui. Depuis que tu gagnes déjà.
Mais tu peux y aller le filer, il va recevoir.
Bon paquet delay.
OK.
Et il y a un million de bagages à process là, 1 million.
OK, parce que nous te recevons papier côté nous jeunes récits que nous payons côté récits immigration dirigeant tout pareil avec nous beaucoup gens.
Et tout process là, process chop et ça le fait. Chop slow process là, les bagages, il écrase, peut s'écraser. S'il te gagne on compte écraser toute bois immigration. Il a fait.
OK.
Avez l'autre question encore?
Non, c'est ça me dire. Merci beaucoup, va tout bien.
Non, même pas de problème et si nous avons n'importe question, nous allons adresser là avec l'organisation qui organise le programme là. Et puis, si vous avez un avocat, vous doit aller, ça a une liste d'avocats qui gagnent, ça c'est service gratuit, ça dépend des gains communs. Si vous avez un travail, vous doit faire ça pour un avocat privé, et vous doit aller Boston Bar Association, mais finalement, vous avez une immigration, un avocat immigration rapide.
Mais non, numéro 7 by dame, non, pour bon,
numéro,
des numéros qui
Oka.
617 464 81 00 617 603 18 08.
Ou ka reprend numéro Boston Association nan pour moi, s'il vous plaît.
Et c'est bon, ouais, je vais chercher le téléphone. Non? Pour parler, et pas père.
Non, Boston Association.
Bon, allez, bon, chercher. OK, le numéro c'est 617 742 0625. Et Boston Bar Association.
Et Boston Bar Association.
742 qui reste là, s'il vous plaît.
0625.
Oh, 0625.
OK.
06.
Vous pouvez au moins me connecter avec un avocat qui fait droit à immigration après fait au royaume.
D'accord, merci un peu.
OK, merci un peu, pas trop bien, c'est un plaisir.
OK, pas de problème.
Bye bye.
Hi, I just want to do a check-in to see if we're close to finishing up. Let me know if you need more time.
No, I'm done.
Well, thank you so much, everybody. And I'm sorry I cannot speak Haitian Creole. I did have to let the interpreter go because she was past her time.
Oh,
but
okay, I'm sorry.
It's okay, not a problem. But we're all done then because I don't want to end it because I end it for everybody. But I hope everyone has a good night and thank you so much for your patience with all the tech. I really appreciate it.
Take care.
You too, thank you.
Yeah, good night.
Have a good night.